I see several people already in the chat. I joined just a little bit early here. So we've got Mystic Drake, Apine, Cadiato, Conde, Drake from France. Oh, you joined. You joined. That's fantastic. Thank you for becoming a member. ASDF, something like that. And Seanmeister, already here. Great. Well, as you can see, we're taking a look at the beetle tank. I'm actually going to be trying to remove larvae here live. So let me know if you can hear me. There's Aunt Sandy Skinks as well. Excited to have you here as always. Theropod Hunters joining in. Who else is here? Got Vance. Great to see you as well. I just want to do a sound check. Make sure you can hear me. Audio is fine. And Sandy read my mind. Okay, well, I'm going to start. I'm going to start pulling things out. You can see there's a bunch of beetles here. It appears there is also a beetle carcass there. That's too sad. But it does happen. Oh, okay. Well, this species of beetle doesn't live a whole long time anyway. It's probably been there for a while under there without me noticing. So we'll take a look at what we're doing here. This looks like this is... my glasses are not what they need to be. We had a very brief period of playing death. Is this a black death fainting beetle? I think this is a black death fainting beetle. There. Sorry. It's hard to see. I'm kind of behind the camera and everything. There's another one. I have some Asbolus laevis in here and some various species. I think that was an Asbolus laevis. Here is the Asbolus verrucosus, the kind of the OG death fainting beetle as far as the hobby is concerned, doing what it does. So let's see who else is in. We've got Laura Taylor. You careful while you're talking to about the joke about the vegan crested geckos. Jimmy, hello. 503, welcome. Marimba girl. So sorry about the dead prunosis, but I'm glad you are finding monk. Hey, that's awesome. That's good stuff. This is a rough death fainter here. The Cryptoglossus, I believe. Oh, I see. Well, they scheduled the live there. Yeah, I saw he'd done that, and I can't blame him. You know, everybody's got to fit them in where they fit them in. I love how they do this. They're so good at playing dead. Or maybe I should just call it atonic immobility, because we're not quite sure if they're actually playing dead or if they're trying to do something else. They're not trying to advertise their position. There's a rough death fainter as well. Here's this. I'm not going to pick this one up directly with my hands. This is why I have gloves on, for the repugnatorial fluid of some of these guys. Don't want to upset them too much. The big Eliotes, some of them are really likely to give you a spray of that stuff. I see invertebrate person is here. I see Kadiato is asking about isopod content. Probably not a lot of isopod content today, mostly beetle stuff. But I am going to be answering some questions from Patreon. In fact, I should hit those really quickly so I don't forget them, because I tend to, if I don't hit them early on in the live stream, I sometimes wait too long. And then the patrons are like, what the heck? Why did it take you so long to get to my questions? You know what I mean? So I want to make sure we get there. So, taking a look here at the comments. So the first comment was left, it looks like, by Ray Eileen. It says, "Hi Russ, I've been wanting to make my corn snakes enclosure bioactive. Do you have any advice for keeping plants safe from a reptile who loves to burrow? I turned away for 1 minute while giving her time to free roam the other day, and she started digging up a potted plant in my room. So yeah, that can be an issue, definitely. Another small blue death veining beetle. I saw a really big larva in here the other day. You may have seen me post it on Instagram. And I want to make sure I get that one out and any other really large larvae and get them in the incubator as soon as possible. So anyway, back to Ray Eileen's question. I would say snakes really dig up plants really well, as you know, but I do have a couple of suggestions. One, the bio dude has a few plants that he suggests for a corn snake setup or other, snake setup, because a lot of the snakes tend to be diggers and fairly destructive to plants, just not on purpose, but just sort of, incidentally, it's rough on the plants because they like to dig. So one thing that he suggests is the lemon button fern. That one has done well for me in snake enclosures pretty well, partly because it just bounces back when they crawl over it. But I would suggest either putting it into a pot and then putting wood or rocks or something similar over the place where they, over the pot, so it's kind of sticking out between those cracks, and the snake would have a harder time getting to a place where it could damage the plant roots. That's really kind of the secret, I think. Those two things is making sure you use a springy, resilient plant. Korean rock fern is, I believe, another one that BioDude suggests. Something like that, and then wedging wherever you plant them, whether that happens to be in a pot and then wedging it between rocks or something like that, so that they are not able to access the soil where the roots are of the plant. That beetle that I just got out, as well as some of these others, were collected while I was down in Arizona with Sky Island Adventures. This one, Eliotis obscura, was collected locally. I can catch these in a 5-minute drive from my house, as well as some other tenebrionid beetles that are desert adapted specimens or desert adapted species. But many of these are from Arizona. Some of these may well be my captive bred blue death veined beetles, and some are not. I'm going to steal your carrot. Sorry, folks. I don't know if you guys can see that. But my daughter recently fed them some carrots. Some of them are nibbling on the carrots. I'm going to put the carrots in here so that they have something to eat. And then we're going to look for larvae. Let's see. I'm going to take out these. These are my water and nectar for the velvet ants. And the beetles also drink from these, both the water and the nectar. Beetles drink from them pretty readily. Some beetles more than others. But I think it's good for them, especially some of the more water-dependent beetles that don't get all the water from their food. It's good for them to have those. The sugar in the nectar may not be great for some of the beetles, like the blue death veining beetles, but they don't seem to go for it as often either, so that kind of makes sense. Take my big flat rock. This is where I keep the nectar wells, the nectar feeders on top of that. There's a beetle jelly feeder. Some of the beetles really like the jelly. Again, that's a food that may not be the best food for some of the beetles, and some of them it's great for. Now, I'm already seeing some larvae, so I'm going to start pulling those out. But the small larvae, I'm not going to try to pupate yet. I'm going to just take a look at them. I see two right now. I'm going to grab. I'm going to get a magnifying glass so we can get a closer look. So, back to Ray Eileen's question. I hope that addresses it. I feel like those are my two contributions to that particular topic. So we'll go with that. And then we'll step into another question from patrons. We got a decent number of them today. So I want to make sure we do them justice. So there you go, Ray Eileen. Let me know if you have any other questions. And we're going to take a look at these beetles and see what we can see. Now this one, at least one of them, sorry, they're getting away from me here. These are not blue death fanning beetle larvae. I can tell because they have sharper terminal segments, like pointy terminal segments. Hopefully you can see that. They do have lighter heads, fairly pale heads, which is a characteristic of blue death fanning beetles, but they also have kind of pointy terminal segments. And that means they're going to have, these are not blue death fanning beetles. And that's okay, Kadiato, if this isn't your episode. I'm not too worried. I'm not concerned about that. And if I would love to see you next time when we do some isopods, which we will. We're going to do isopods. So we're just probably not going to do that today. So Max, I've never kept that species. Congrats on your elephant hawk moth theropod hunter. That's awesome. Heaven, hello. Razor clam. So this is the U.S. invertebrate substrate, and what we're doing is combing through it for larvae, because I saw some absolutely huge larvae in here. Oh, there's a beetle right there. Absolutely huge larvae in there the other day, and one of them was a blue death fanning beetle larva, and it was gigantic, ready to pupate. So I'm going to go through the substrate. In fact, I'm going to scoot this over a bit because I think they're going to be more on this side of the enclosure where it's more moist. And we're going to look at larvae, see what we can find. So this larva, too small to pupate. This larva, too small to pupate. And looking at them with the magnifying glass, the terminal segment, they are not blue death fanning beetles either. That doesn't mean I wouldn't want to pupate them and see what they are at some point. But I'm looking specifically for blue death fanning beetle larvae, and they will be considerably larger than these. The ones that I was thinking about pupating were much larger. But you can see that I am getting a lot of larvae in this enclosure. I wonder if these are all the same species. It's hard to say. They all look pretty similar, but the telltale signs I'm looking for this time are the semi-lunate terminal segment, very rounded, very hairy, and a very light head. None of these are even approaching the size of the beetle larva I was talking about. I'm curious if these belong to one of the smaller beetle species I have in here, because I do have a number of smaller species in here. There's obviously a lot of them, and these all seem to be about the same size so far. Like I said, I need to find that really large one from the other day. And I'm going to look at some other comments. So Melanie KM says, I'd like to know what a good beginner millipede... Oh, no. Asked two questions, and I'm going to connect them. Oh, yeah, this is the first one. I'd like to know what a good beginner millipede for a first-time keeper. Also, are there any issues with keeping millipedes and isopods together in the same enclosure? So millipedes that I have kept that are good for beginners. Bumblebee millipedes are great for beginners, especially if you can get them captive bred. But I've had success with even field-collected specimens, getting them to breed. But you need to keep them warm enough, not like super hot or anything, but they don't like it below about 72, I believe. That's the temperature that Bugs in Cyberspace was saying. I think 72, and my experience has been too that if you keep them cooler, they don't do all that well. They are tropical millipedes from Jamaica originally. They're naturalized in Florida and probably other places. I field collected some in Miami Beach. And some of the ones I keep now are descended from that group. Well, there are so many larvae in here. This is crazy. But I still haven't seen any of the blue death feigners yet. Oh, there's one. This is a large blue death feigner that is now shortened itself. They tend to kind of contract quite a bit when you bother them. So you can see this one's considerably larger and thicker, but it's it's a lot shorter than it is when it's fully extended. This one has the rounded terminal segment. Let's see if we can get a good shot of that. Very, very rounded terminal segment. And that's and the light head. Those are two characteristics of the blue death feigning beetle, as well as this contraction when they are bothered. So that is a blue death feigning beetle. It might be the same one that I found. It might be a slightly smaller one, I'm not sure. But I'm going to keep digging, see what we see. And we will keep talking about these things. So back to Melanie and her question. I think rainbow millipedes are another good one, but I have not worked with them myself, so I'm hesitant to say a whole lot about them. Because I feel like I don't have any experience with them. I'm going to put this blue death feigning beetle larva right in here. This is a separate enclosure so it doesn't get confused or lost or whatever. This is going to go in the incubator. I think that one is ready for the incubator. These larvae are super active. They're running all over the place. And there's so many of them. So another one is ivory millipedes, especially captive bred ivory millipedes do better than the others. Scarlet millipedes are another easy one. All of these will breed readily in captivity. I've bred all of those. There's another probably blue death feigner. Yep, that is a blue death feigner. Might be a little small, not sure. I think I'm going to go ahead and take it out. We'll see. Going to keep digging for these. Another one, let's see. What other millipedes have I kept that I would actually recommend? Those would be my top 3 recommendations of the ones that I've kept for a beginner. Honestly, I'm going to go with that. Hopefully that's enough information on that one. And then the other question Melanie had relating to millipedes was a follow-up question. Said, what are your thoughts on keeping more than one species of millipede together? Oh no, before that, are there any issues with keeping millipedes and isopods together in the same enclosure? There can be. There are people who do it. Can be done. Partly depends on your goal, but there can be problems. And one of the problems that crops up is when a millipede molts, the isopods can eat it, especially if it's just slightly injured, not enough to hurt it. Otherwise, like enough so that it would be able to remolt again and fix everything in the next molt. Just some minor damage. But it has issues because the isopods detect the damage and come after it. So that is a thing that happens. And there's another problem. They can outcompete one another. They can decide, their populations grow, and then one has a slight edge because of its adaptations over the other. And then you find out you don't have, there's one of the tiny beetles that I have in here. Then you find out you don't have, one of them starts dying off because the other one has outcompeted it. That is a very possible scenario with such things when you're mixing isopods and millipedes. Okay, we had one more question from Melanie, and then we'll move on to another patron's questions, I think. So Melanie says, I have a follow-up to my millipede question. What are your thoughts on keeping more than one species of millipede in an enclosure together? And I think it partly depends on the number and your goals. If you just want to keep a few pet millipedes, a lot of them will not be particularly aggressive with one another. If you have, say, an orthoporous millipede with an ivory millipede with one bumblebee millipede, you're probably not going to have any issues. But if you're trying to breed any of them, or if they decide they're going to breed, like you have a female that was already, ready to lay eggs, and she lays fertile eggs and so on, that's where you might encounter some troubles. You might have them start out competing one another. 3 specimens with plenty of resources and without the ability to breed because they don't have mates or whatever, probably won't have a big issue, but if you're trying to breed them, one might cause problems for the other. What is that? Oh, there's a recently molted skin of one, it appears. Possibly one of those blue death fainers. One of them's already burying itself in the substrate over here. There are so many of these. I wonder what they are. They don't seem to like to touch each other. When they run into each other, they really wiggle around more so than, say, mealworms do or whatever. I wonder if they're trying to, they're bothering each other or biting each other or something, or if it's just the touching that's bothering them. I'm not sure. Okay, well, Melanie, I hope that helps. Those are great questions. And those are my thoughts upon those topics. Let's move on to, let's see. Next comment is from Vance. Vance says, I recently had a bloom of yellow mushrooms in my Porcellia pruinosis bin. They're very cool looking, but should I be concerned for my isopods? Probably looking at flower pot fungus, sounds like. Flower pot fungus is not known to be harmful to isopods. It may have there may be risks to humans. Certainly, wash your hands after touching it. Try not to inhale, the the spores. And any contact you make with them, I would definitely wash my hands. There may be some risks there. I'm not entirely sure how that goes, but I've heard that there could be some risks there and you should wash your hands. But other than that, they shouldn't harm your isopods at all. I would consider increasing the cross ventilation in the enclosure. That seems to be helpful. I've found that helpful myself. In dealing with such things. I haven't had flower pot fungus in a long time. So, I think I'm done with Patreon questions. And I can look more at the chat now as I'm between digging and whatnot. Let's take a look at all these larvae that I just pulled out. These aren't even all of them because I separated a couple of confirmed blue death feigning beetles. But these are the larvae that I pulled out. Quite a lot of them. You can see they're kind of skittering along as they touch each other. A little bit different behavior from what you might get from a mealworm. A group of mealworms seem to be a lot less comfortable with one another in close proximity than mealworms do. They may be more cannibalistic, or there may be other reasons for that. I'm not sure. So, I've missed a lot of the chat as I've been digging, so if anyone else has if you have other comments you want to add, go ahead and ask them again. And I will see what I can do. So, oh, I lost the comment there. Where is it? Sierra, any ideas for low bio tank mates? Excuse me, for cherry shrimp. Low bioload tank mates for cherry shrimp. Trying to think. I've kept various things with cherry shrimp. There's always the small school of very, very tiny nanofish, like small rasboras or something, that are just less, they had less bioload simply by virtue of their tiny size and the fact that they're not like endlers or something that's just going to go crazy breeding in there immediately. You can breed things like that. I mean, you can breed the danios, and sometimes they will breed in the tank. I have bred celestial pearl danios, for example. They're quite small nanofish, and they're super cool. It's been a long time since I worked with them, but I have produced them, and they sort of just, as long as the temperature is not too warm, they seem to just kind of lay eggs all the time in small numbers, and that's kind of how it goes. Found another blue death feigning beetle here. So I'm going to throw that in this one. So that's 3. Here's another one that's burying itself. And There's another one that has already buried itself. I think those three are close enough to pupation. I think we'll be good to go. Probably put a piece or two of rotting wood in there, just in case they get hungry. I was hoping to find a few more larvae of the blue death veining beetle specifically, so I'm going to dig around for a little while longer, see what I can see. Sometimes they're easy to miss on the first pass. Whatever these are, they're all over the place. And maybe I should just try pupating a few of them. They don't seem to get very big. I don't see any that are bigger than... Oh, I think I'll pull a couple of the biggest ones out. Try to pupate those. That's what I'm going to do. So, here are my blue death veiners. Oh, there's an adult beetle that somehow got missed. This is a blue death veiner. This is a blue death veiner that's already buried itself. So in case they decide to do surface pupation, which is a huge pain, but it does happen, it's nice to have... This is a trick I learned from Invertebrate Dude. You put a couple of pieces of wood around them if they're surface pupating, and they're not yet, but they might get there. And then they have something to grab on so they don't get dents in their elytrae as they sclerotize or harden up. So those are in there in case that happens. They all do seem to be burying themselves, which is a good sign. I've got the incubator at 88 degrees Fahrenheit, and I'm going to bump it up to 75 to 80% relative humidity. I'm going to throw a few of these over in the corner. This is well-rotted wood. This is from BioLives. It serves as food for the beetles as well as hiding places and things to grab onto. And now I'm going to take these beetles and move them, these larvae. Still need to label them, but they're burying themselves, good sign. When they refuse to bury themselves and they just go nuts on the surface, I kind of worry about them, but that they do pupate sometimes like that. Now I'm just going to dig around here to find some of the larger larvae from this group here. I'm guessing some of these will pupate if I throw them in. I'm tempted to try to do more than one together, but I don't know if that's going to be a good idea. So, but a lot of these larvae apparently pupate in response to heat. So going into the incubator will probably help them out quite a bit. Just trying to find a few that are larger. And they're burying themselves almost immediately. This other one was anyway. Let's see what that one does. There's another adult beetle from a smaller species. Okay. So now I'm gonna try pupating those. I'm not putting anything in those to distinguish them from the others. Maybe I'll just put like a tiny little fleck in there. Tiny little piece. And then we'll put the larval beetles back in, and then we'll put the adult beetles in. So these, with the tiny pieces of wood, those are not blue death veiners. The ones with the larger pieces of wood are the blue death veiners. So now I'm going to dump these larvae back in for now. We can watch them bury themselves again. That ought to be kind of fun. So I have had blue death veining beetles pupate and become adults. It's been a while since I've, had the time and energy to focus on it. That larva buried itself very quickly, you can see. But it works. It's as long as you get the conditions right, they seem to do really well. And so I'm looking forward to getting them to pupate again with these 3 larvae. Have a reasonable chance of some success again, I hope. Oop. And now I'm just gonna put these pieces of wood back in the the vivarium here. I really love this vivarium. It's fun to watch. So yeah, so luch, I have had them pupate before successfully to adulthood. It's just been a while since I've had the time and energy to focus on it, and I don't know that I have, you know, it's just, you got to pick your battles, so to speak. And that's what I chose to do for a while, was just kind of not do that. And, oh, we have Super Chat from Richard, Tarantula Collective. Fantastic. Great to see you here, Richard. And I am a little stressed, but doing okay. I am energized by your presence and your Super Chat, and that always helps make my day, so I appreciate it. And I did have some good news today, which I should probably share with everybody as I'm putting these beetles back. Those of you who have been on the list for the baby garter snakes, I've been giving update. I gave an update recently and was concerned because I took Ruby into the vet because I think I spoke on my last live stream how I very sadly lost Houdini, who's a male, one of my male red-sided garters, and I was devastated, of course. And then shortly thereafter, the other male passed, Rufus, and I was devastated, but also now doubly concerned because, you know, garter snakes do pass away sometimes without much rhyme or reason to it. And I was thinking, well, maybe that's what's happened with Houdini, but then Rufus passed away shortly thereafter. I thought there might be an issue here that needs to be addressed. So I took Ruby in, my female, who was housed with the males. She looked perfectly fine, but I was concerned, so I took her into the vet, and the vet examined her. We ran a fecal test, cryptosporidium test, and a test, what was the other one we did? We did a blood panel, trying to remember what all we did. Anyway, we did a whole bunch of tests to figure out what was going on. And I just heard today, fortunately, the cryptosporidium test was negative, because that is not something you want to mess around with, and I was concerned about it. So she is okay that way. She's on a course of antibiotics because she has an elevated blood cell count. The vet, when he observed her, said she looks good physically, like she looks great. She's eating great. She's acting normal, no problems. But the fact that the blood panel revealed that there was a elevated blood cell count, he just wanted to, you know, make sure everything was okay, and I'm glad he did, because an elevated blood cell count could be an issue, infection, whatever, you know, bacterial infection. So she's on antibiotics. We're giving her injections every 3 days for a while, and she doesn't like them, but it should help her. So excited it's not crypto, because crypto is really bad news and really scary and really can be quite contagious. So she's doing well. So in the midst of a tragedy of losing my two males, who were, you know, 5 years old, not super old, but not super young for garter snakes, but still scary and horrible, so sad. But at least Ruby is doing well. And none of the other snakes look sick or anything. They're all doing well. The babies are doing well. Lost that one runt a couple days after birth, but all the rest of them are doing fine and are now taking straight pinkies, not whole pinkies, but straight minced pinkies. They're not taking, I don't have to mix it with other things anymore, because they often have to have mixed with earthworms or fish to eat it, but they're just, they're doing fine. So I've kind of got everything set up back again here. You can see the beetles wandering about, hopefully. Yeah, you can see a little bit of the beetles wandering around. And I need to make labels for these 5 beetle enclosures that I, incubation chambers, whatever, that I set up. So I'm going to do that really quick. Put dates and species on them. Well, and at least labels about, I can label the species for the Asbolus verrucosus, the blue death fanging beetle, but I'm not going to put a species for the unknown species. I'll just say unknown tenebrionid or something like that, and we'll go with that. So, but it was nice to have the news that Ruby's okay. And the babies are okay. And the melanistic garters are okay. Kiki, the female, the new female I have, and all the males seem to be doing fine. So, Marimba Girl, recall that you have kept diabolical ironclad beetles. Yes, in fact, I should have one in this tank somewhere. Unless I'm misremembering, how do they do as pets? Okay. They seem to do fine. I haven't bred them. I'm not sure if anybody has or not. But they're very long-lived. They seem to do well in a desert beetle tank, even though their habitat is a little more mesic or moister than this beetle tank. They get enough moist food. They seem to do really well. The next question, how many different species are in this beetle tank? Honestly, I don't know. I don't know. I would estimate at least 20 species in here. Like I said, I have 2 or 3 of the species in here I've collected locally. Some people have sent me some. Some of the blue death feigning beetles may well be some of the ones that I produced. And I collect a lot of them in Arizona with Sky Island Adventures. And I think some of them just Sky Island Adventures just sent to me, not connecting to my trip. So Merva, I actually, in the summer, I often do earlier live streams. So I'm going to try to do that, do some earlier live streams this summer so that it's easier for you to attend. And those of you in parts of the world where this is not a very appropriate time for you to have a live stream, I try to do that in the summers so that you have that at least for a little while. So I'll make sure I do some of that this summer. I'm just printing out dates here on my label maker. It's 5/22, right? 5/22. Want to know when I put these in the incubator, of course. It would be really frustrating to have that information not documented here. So cyberspace, Cosmonaut, any idea how to trap springtails to move to a different terrarium? There's a lot of ways to do that. Often what I'll do is pick up a piece of bark, make sure there are no isopods on it, and there are usually lots of springtails on it, and then just lift it over to another small container, tap them off into that container, and then move that into another bin. That is often what I do. Oh, 503 has a good idea too. So 503 is back and in business. So there's some ideas with the put on the CGD or the vegetable bits. Yeah, like you could do like a sweet potato slice or something like that. Those are good ideas to get them moved over. Another one is I will take moss, sphagnum moss from my moist area, which is often well populated with springtails, and then I will just take a chunk out of it, make sure there aren't any isopods in it, and I don't take it from an isopod species that's likely to be pestiferous. I think I learned this from Wally, actually. So I'll take it out of like a rubber ducky bin or something, and then I will put that moss into the other enclosure, and then I've moved enough springtails. There's usually 20, 25 more springtails on that, and that's enough to get started in the new bin. And if I find out I have a rubber ducky in another bin, which I have done on occasion, because I moved a tiny little juvenile over without noticing, excuse me, then I'm not concerned, because it is a gecko. I mean, it's not a gecko, it's a rubber ducky, and that's fine. I can move it over back to the new bin without worrying about infestation, as like I might if it were dwarf whites or prenosis or something. So I hope that makes sense. Those are my thoughts on the matter. So, invertebrate person, which insects appear way more in summer? Just curious. Depends on where you live. In my case, almost every insect appears more in summer because I don't see very many at all in winter. And I guess I see them in spring and fall, but velvet ants are most visible in summer and fall typically. I don't usually start seeing like desert tenebrionid beetles until maybe May is when I start seeing them, and then they're all around in summer, and then they start tapering off in fall. A lot of moths and butterflies, things like that. All right, so shall I show you what I got after my collection? I have, here's one blue death feigning beetle larva. Well, not the larva, but the container in which the larva resides. Here's another one. And here's another one. So we've got 3 blue death feigning beetle larvae, and then 2 of these unknown larvae. I tried to get the larger ones to see what happens, if they're going to pupate or whatever. I hope so. Here's an important part of the process. You gotta get a cover on there because the beetles can crawl out. And the first beetle I ever successfully pupated crawled out because I had a lid, but I had a hole in the lid, and the hole was too big. Beetle crawled out and very nearly drowned itself. It fell into the water well at the bottom of the incubator. It got all wet and looked dead. And so I pulled it out, let it dry out, and started moving, and it was fine. And that was the first blue death feigning beetle I ever produced. But I was quite frustrated with the fact that it nearly died, just because I hadn't thought to cover it properly. And like I said, it did have a lid on it, but the ventilation hole in the lid was too big. It's about 1 inch, and it got out. So now I don't do that. I'm going to use these covers this time. And now I'm going to label these by species to the extent that I can. So clear that out and escape. How do I even get there? Okay, clear. I'm just going to put BDFB. BDFB. Sorry, you got a bunch of glare. BDFB and then unknown species for the other 2. Hopefully once they pupate, if they pupate, I will be able to identify them. And there comes the label. All right, so we got another super chat that I missed. Is that true? Did I miss a super chat? I think I did, but I don't know. Let me go over to super chats and see what I missed. Oh, I got a super chat from Vance that I missed, saying thank you. So thank you to you, Vance, for the super chat as well. So Richard and Vance both sent super chats, which I appreciate greatly. So, sorry, we can see the beetles crawling around just a bit. Okay. Well, it is true that Bugs in Cyberspace offers wild-caught blue death feigning beetles. He's very careful to be sustainable about his collecting practices, and he has done a lot in terms of getting people to breed them in captivity. So, as well as just for the bug hobby in general. So, I would highly encourage you to support Peter. And if you get some blue deathwing beetles from him, just breed them. Just do your best to breed them, and that will be a great thing for the hobby. So I definitely suggest supporting Bugs in Cyberspace for all of those reasons, as well as others. So here we go. Just putting the labels on. Sorry, it's taking me a second to do that. Hopefully you can enjoy some Beetle's movement as we do this. How long has this stream been going? About 45 minutes. 45 minutes. So any other questions you have about what's been going on that I can fill you in on? Maybe we can take a look at some of their creatures too if we have a chance. So Luch, you got your Narcissus americanus, Narcissus gordanus, high yellow and regular, and your Thai rainbows from Peter. Yeah, Peter is great. And Peter's actually sending me a package very soon. I should be getting it in the next couple of days. I'm looking forward to that. I'm not going to spoil it by telling you what's in it, but it's coming. And it's coming soon. Okay, so now all of those are labeled, and I will soon be putting them in the incubator. Excited for that. Things are looking just a little bit fuzzy in there, aren't they? There's several beetles hanging out. So blue death fainting beetles are not hard at all to get to reproduce in terms of laying eggs or even hatching out larvae, or the larvae even growing. Those are all pretty easy to do. Basically, you need to get some substrate that has some organic material in it, preferably, and feed them well. They do well on a lot of insects, freshly killed insects in their diet. Things like pre-killed crickets or roaches could be good, as well as lots of other foods. Try not to do too many sugary foods. In the wild, most of their diet consists of insect material, but so yeah, and then you need to keep a portion of the substrate moist, but keep most of it dry with lots of ventilation and keep the humidity low, and the adults will do well. But down in the moist area with the organic material, that's what this corner is. I keep this corner moisture, and I just added a bunch of well-rotted wood to it since I dug up the substrate and mixed it all up. So if you do that, you'll eventually find larvae like I did. I just pulled 3 larger larvae out of the enclosure. And then you put them into a container with substrate to bury themselves in. This is what I'm using this time is the Biodude Terra Sahara, because it retains burrows and retains some moisture and retains the burrows, good stuff. So Biodude's Terra Sahara is what I'm using there. Keep a lid on that container, but make sure it's got some ventilation like this one. Put it into an incubator at about 88 Fahrenheit with some humidity, relative humidity about 75 to 80%, and wait. And you should get some beetles. So that's how you do it. Let's see. So Merva said, your Armadillium gestori passed away. I am sorry to hear that. Those are one of my favorite species. It's very sad. It would be very sad anyway, but it's very sad partly because it is one of my favorite isopod species of all time. So I'm sad to hear that. So Frank to tank. Yeah, if you can keep the tank warm enough, that makes sense. I have never tried to get them to pupate in the adult enclosure, but I see that could work. So the well-rotted wood I got from BioLives. They are a great source of isopod substrates and various supplies, including the well-rotted wood. So Merva, hopefully, if you've got 5 left, you could get a big batch of babies, and your colony could be great. It's possible. Let's hope so. Well, we have about 10 minutes left. That's pretty cool. We still have some time to chat. Good. Now that I can focus more on the screen and looking at your comments than I could when I was digging. So let's see. 503 says, do the other species of death fainting beetles need the same specific conditions to pupate like the rough death fainting beetles and the blacks? From what I understand, many of them do respond to heat as a pupation trigger. I haven't experimented a whole lot with the others, but that's why I'm putting those two individuals, I didn't understand what they were, why I put them in the, I'm going to put those in the incubator too. Talking to TJ or Tristan at Invertebrate Dude, he has bred a whole lot of darkling beetles of various types, probably more than most people, maybe more than anybody in the hobby. And I think what he has said to me is that many of them respond to heat as a pupation trigger. So Luch, what temp do you keep the enclosure for the death feeding beetles? So for the larvae, for pupation, 88 degrees is my target. For the adult enclosure, I put a heat gradient. On one side, I have a basking lamp. It's one of those little halogen spotlight basking lamps, and I put that on the left side of the enclosure, very near the end. And it makes a hot spot in the 90s or so, 90s or so Fahrenheit. And then, you get a heat gradient. So on the other side of the enclosure, it might be only in the mid 70s in the daytime, and then at night it cools down because the light goes off and the whole room cools down, and it might be down around 70 or so. In the winter it's cooler than that, down into the 60s even, but yeah, I don't there's always a heat gradient on during the day, so probably low to mid 90s, maybe even high 90s sometimes in the summer on the warm side, and down into the mid 70s in the daytime, and the cool side, and down into even the 60s in the night, and especially winter. Oh yeah, spring to tank, I could do that. I could scatter some things in here. They're eating the carrots, but it would be fun to see them eat some other things. Yeah, Luch, basically the thermal gradient like I would for a reptile, exactly. And Marimbago, yeah, dairy cows are magic. They grow so fast. So cyberspace, yeah, that's right. You can keep blue death veined beetles in pretty small enclosure, but if you want them to thrive and do well, I do recommend a larger one where you can get a heat gradient. So something like a 20-gallon long is a good place to start, because that's about the smallest tank that you can easily create a heat gradient. You can create it in smaller containers. If you have one of those halogen bulbs on a dimmer switch, which is a good idea. Many times halogen bulbs are good at, they respond well to dimmer switches, and you can make it cooler and get the appropriate temperature you need. So you could do it conceivably in a 10-gallon tank if you did that with a dimmer switch. I use the dimmer switches on halogen bulbs for all of my snakes, I believe. I think, yeah, all of my snakes are on a halogen bulb with a dimmer switch, so I can regulate the temperatures. Because bulbs don't respond well to thermostats in general. There are some exceptions to that, but just the normal thermostats you get for heat mats don't work with light bulbs. But a dimmer switch does work, and then you can regulate the temperatures. So Theropod Hunter, oh, I'm sorry to hear about your Cubaris marina. So sad. That is one of my favorite Cubaris, to be honest, especially the anemone. What, do you have a cause of death? All right. Comments, are they frozen? Or is it just, wasn't a comment made just now? Okay, anybody have any other requests for what you want to see or what you want to talk about while we're waiting to see? Oh, that's cool. You're going to have corn snake babies. Fantastic. Stanley. Let's take a look at Stanley maybe, huh? If I can figure out where he's hanging out. He's moved. There he is. Flat Stanley's doing well. Just fed him this morning, I believe. And so invertebrate person, I don't have any live try-ups right now. I do have eggs. Sorry, this is going to be messy, but there we go. We do have some I do have some eggs, so maybe I could hatch some triops soon. Probably not by next stream, though. Next stream is actually going to be, well, no, not the next stream. I have a stream coming up, a couple of guest and special streams. I have a stream with reptiles coming up soon. I'm excited for that. And before that, I think it's before that, I have a stream coming up with Don's garter snakes. So looking forward to that as well. We're going to be sexing the baby garter snakes live. Ooh, there is Tiny, holdback red-sided right there. Looks like Amber just shed her tank mate, who's an eastern with flame ancestry, but does not appear to be exhibiting the flame trait. Yeah. So she just shed, I think that was today. Have to get in there and play with that. So Stanley's doing fine. Here's some orange koi isopods hanging out. Have them in this small container. You can see there's a baby hiding in the substrate. Getting him to reproduce a bit. I had a little bit of not a crash in the sense like I didn't lose them all, but I lost some of these guys, and so I put them in a smaller container to kind of build up the population. It looks like they're doing okay, and it's about time to switch them over. I did the same thing with my Dubrovnik over here for a similar reason. We had a reduction in population, and so I moved them over to a small bin, and they seem to be doing well. So we'll see how that goes. Oh yeah, there's definitely some algal growth down in the substrate. The springtails like, and I'm sure the isopods like, whatever they can reach. So, and I'm not sure, Hakeem, how to pronounce that first name, but I have Triops cancroformis eggs as well as longicaudatus. I've never hatched the cancroformis. I need to do that. Looking forward to it, but I think it's getting too warm now. So, Evangelium, what's my rarest isopod species? I don't know. I've really moved away from keeping a lot of the ones that I can't ship. I haven't completely, but I have been in that process, so I don't really have any rare ones, per se. Orange koi are invading my bins, but they get away with it because they're pretty. The rubber duckies are doing so well, though. That's fantastic. So Peacegaber lava or orange koi, which is prettier. They're both very pretty. It's almost a toss-up for me. I have a preference for the lava, but it's a very slight one. They are fantastic, both of them. I just really like the contrast of the dark versus the light, because the lava get very, very dark, darker than most scaber, almost black on their dark areas. And then they have the orange, so it's a really fun contrast. The koi are almost the opposite, and they have orange, and then they have usually whiter markings. But the contrast is a very pretty effect. It's just not quite as pronounced, maybe. So I love them both, but if I had to pick, it'd be lava, but only by a small margin. So, Hakeem, the cancroformis are the red albino cancroformis, so I'm not sure where those come from. Yeah, there's a load of snails in here. I've been thinking of putting an assassin snail in here, in this tank. I haven't done it yet, but I'm thinking of doing it. I don't think it would be a bad thing. There's a banded diving beetle right there, coming after the food. If we wait like 2 minutes, there'll be a ton of creatures eating this food. But I'm a vertebrate person. It's just a simple matter of if you put ram's horn snails in a tank and there's available food, you will get more ram's horn snails. That's all it is. So I'm not exactly a fan of having this many in there, which is why I'm thinking of putting an assassin snail in. And here is a sunburst diving beetle, probably the prettiest species in the tank. There are several of them in here. I only see the one right now, but probably my favorite of the Thermonectus. And all right, so it is about that time. Somebody was warning me. I think it was Frank's, which I appreciate. Thank you, Frank. I've got to close down. I got critters to feed and things to do. But there's my giant. This is my giant water scavenger beetle right here. You can see his legs moving around. He is a big beetle, so much bigger than all the others. He's about the same size as a toe biter, but not quite as aggressive. They're more omnivorous rather than predaceous. So it's not uncommon to find beetles attached to the land area like this beetle is to this cork bark here. Pretty cool. So big. So I'm so glad everybody was able to make it today. Thank you for joining. Thank you for the super chats to Vance and to Richard of the Tarantula Collective. And I'm going to close up now, but hope to see you in the next one. Thank you, everyone, and thank you, Opal Whispers, for the sticker. Appreciate it.